Okay, I need to be honest about something before we even get into this. I'm starting to run out of ways to say I didn't expect this to be this good, because that's basically been my relationship with Wuthering Waves for the last year. Every major update I'd sit down expecting fine, maybe good, and then I end up making a video about how Kuro somehow found another gear. At some point that stops being a nice surprise and starts being a pattern I actually have to explain. And going into 3.5 I had 3 separate reasons to think, okay, maybe this is finally where they don't pull it off, at least for me. I was skeptical about how they were going to handle the story structure itself. I had pretty specific expectations for Yangyang and Rover's awakenings, expectations I didn't think they'd actually hit, and I've been saying for almost 2 years that this game has one real problem with its central conflict. So this video isn't just 3.5 was good. I've said that enough times that it's starting to sound hollow even to me. This is me going through the 3 things I was bracing for and figuring out, honestly, why none of them went the way I thought. So here's the thing I didn't say out loud before this update dropped. I was a little worried about the multi-POV structure. Not because Kuro can't write, but because I've seen this exact mechanic before in a different gacha, and it was not great. Actually, it was kind of the beginning of that game losing me entirely. So when I found out 3.5 was going to split its story across 3 perspectives, Yangyang, Rover and Sui, my first reaction wasn't excitement, it was, oh no, please don't. And I want to walk through why that fear turned out to be completely misplaced, because the way this episode opens is honestly some of the most patient, most confident storytelling this game has done. It starts with a letter from Yangyang, then almost immediately the perspective shifts and we're watching the inciting incident play out from Yangyang and Shishia's side. This is the moment Yangyang goes missing. We're not being told about it after the fact, we're in it. And then, just when you think the episode's about to sprint toward the mystery, it doesn't. It stops and gives us this genuinely unexpected send-off to Lahairoi. I already thought Lahairoi got one of the best epilogues this game has ever written. I did not expect a second one, tucked into the start of an entirely different region. But that's what we get, small, quiet goodbyes from the cast delivered through voice messages in the chat app, which, by the way, is a feature they didn't really use like this before. Every character gets their own message and I'll just say it, they're genuinely emotional. I was not prepared for that. Only after all of that do we actually step back into Huanglong, back to Jinzhou, the very first place this game started, 2 years ago. Seeing those old faces again is different than I expected it to. And here's what I appreciated the most, they don't linger. We don't sit in nostalgia for 10 minutes, we move straight into the actual crisis. Yangyang is missing, and Rover is the one who has to process that. There's this one moment, small, almost easy to miss, where you can see the tremor in Rover's hands, in their eyes, when they realize what's happened to Yangyang. And I keep thinking about how far this character has come. Rover barely reacted to anything at launch. 2 years of storytelling later, we get this. That's not just character growth. That's the writing team trusting themselves enough to slow down and let the silence do the work. That patience shows up everywhere in this episode. Honestly, nothing gets rushed, nothing gets overstated, and it's not only about the named characters. We actually get time with the ordinary people of Suanfang Hold, the ones caught in the middle when the automata that protected them for 200 years suddenly turn hostile. We see the gruesomeness of it. We see someone's last breath actually leave them on screen without cutting away. That's not a small choice. A lot of stories would skip past that to keep the pace moving. This one doesn't. So back to my worry about the 3 perspective structure. By the end of the episode, I genuinely can't find a complaint. It didn't fragment the story, it deepened it. Watching the same events refracted through Yangyang, Rover and Sui gave each of them more room to actually be a person instead of a function of the plot. And the fact that you can choose which perspective to start with helped too. But honestly, I don't think that was even the deciding factor. The writing itself just earned it. As an introduction to a brand new region, I don't think Wuthering Waves has done better than this. But the story wasn't even the part I was most nervous about. Here's my second confession. I expected both of these awakenings to be handled like afterthoughts. Rover gets new elements periodically. It happened before, it's usually treated as a stat unlock more than a story bit. New power, brief acknowledgement, move on. So going into 3.5, even though I was hoping for something meaningful, I was bracing myself to just get another one of those. And with Yangyang, the first character in this game to get an actual new form, I assumed the opposite problem. I thought they'd rush it, that by the time the episode started she'd already be awakened somewhere off screen, and we'd just be told about it. Neither of those things happened, and I'm still kind of stunned by that. Yangyang doesn't awaken until the very end of the episode. The entire story is her journey toward it, not the aftermath of it. That's backwards from how these things usually go in gacha games, and it's exactly why it lands as hard as it does. What makes it even better is that her own power is the thing driving it. Her forte, breath of winds, lets her hear the frequencies of the wind, sense things other people can't. Throughout the episode, that same ability is what lets her connect to echoes of people lost in Swanfang Hold over the last 200 years. That's part of what pulls her awakening forward. But only part, because the epilogue leaves this deliberately unresolved. Was this mostly her own potential finally surfacing, or did something external actually reach into her? We don't fully know yet. What we do know is that Yangyang isn't just getting bigger numbers. She's being set up as someone whose importance stretches well past this one region. Even she doesn't seem to understand it yet. And knowing how much care went into this one awakening, I have a feeling these aren't going to happen often, which is a little bittersweet. I'd love to see more characters get this treatment, but it also means when it does happen again, it's going to matter. Then there's Rover. Rover's awakenings have never really carried weight before. New element, brief moment, back to the story. I expected 3.5 to follow that same pattern. It didn't. This one happens through Shin, Mengzo's sentinel, and there's one line from her that's been stuck in my head since I heard it. She tells Rover that this power wasn't supposed to be theirs. That's it, one sentence. But sit with what that actually implies. This entire story has been about Rover following a thread. The plan, the mission, whatever the Grand Architect and Fractious have been steering them toward, going with the current, basically. And this might be the first real moment where Rover steps outside of that, takes something that wasn't written into their fate. I did not expect that framing, and I'm genuinely happy it's there, because it gives Rover's growth an actual direction instead of just another elemental upgrade. Two awakenings, two things I expected to be handled like formalities, neither one was, which brings me to the thing I have genuinely been waiting almost 2 years for. If you watched this channel for a while, you already know my biggest criticism of this game's story. The conflict never moved, same antagonist, same overarching plan, practically since day one. I've made entire videos about this, so walking into 3.5, there was exactly one thing I wanted more than anything else. A new conflict, a new villain, an actual one, not a subplot. We got him. His name is Muyu. And here's what makes him interesting to me. He's almost a shallower mirror of the Grand Architect, which sounds like it should be a criticism. It isn't. The Grand Architect is a genuinely layered antagonist. We've seen exactly what he's capable of, especially after Lahai Roy and Denia. The horrifying stuff, the fact that he seems to enjoy it, but there's still a real ambiguity underneath all of that. Could his methods actually save the world? We still don't fully know. That question is still open, and it's part of what makes him compelling. Muyu doesn't have any of that. He's not trying to save anything. From the second he shows up, pretending to be one of the good guys, everything about him screams otherwise. And finding out more about him doesn't soften that at all. What I find almost funny is that so much of what drives him seems to come from an inferiority complex towards the Sentinels. He gives this whole ominous speech about how dangerous, how mysterious they are, and by this point in the story, we as players already understand the Sentinels better than he does. So we're just sitting there listening to him build up this big reveal about something we've already had explained to us. It's a little bit like watching someone deliver a dramatic warning about a movie you've already seen. Which doesn't mean he's incompetent, he's clearly brilliant in his own ways. He figured out how to turn 200 years of automata against the people they protected by fitting the emotions of the dead directly into them. That's genuinely disturbing, genuinely clever, but pair that with the pettiness, the god complex riding on top of an inferiority complex, and you get someone who ends up looking almost a little pathetic by the end of it. A genius who's also kind of a clown. And this isn't even the whole picture, because Act 1 buried something I almost forgot to mention. Sui Sui, Yangyang's own sister, has secretly been working alongside Shen, Mengzo's sentinel. and there's corruption running through Huanglong that this update barely scratches the surface of. Xin has since gone missing. That thread is clearly meant to run through the next several updates, maybe through the entire nation. So 3.5 didn't just give me the one new villain I've wanted for 2 years, it gave me an entire second layer of conflict, politics, corruption, a sentinel's disappearance, sitting underneath him waiting. So back to where I started. I went into 3.5 nervous about 3 separate things, a structure I'd seen fail somewhere else, 2 awakenings I assumed would be underwhelming, a villain problem I'd been complaining about for almost 2 years, and every single one of them turned out better than I expected. Not just fine, better. I keep saying this game finds another gear, and at some point I have to admit, that's not luck anymore. That's a studio that's actually learning, update after update, what this story is capable of. I still don't know exactly what Muyu's endgame is. I don't know what's actually happened to Xin, or how deep this corruption runs through Huanglong. I don't know what Yangyang's bigger role ends up looking like, or whether Rover stepping outside their fate here means something much larger down the line. But for the first time in a while, I'm not dreading the wait to find out. I'm actually excited for it. So what stood out to you most from 3.5? The awakenings, the new villain, or that opening send-off to Lahai Roi nobody saw coming? Anyway, that's gonna be all from me for this one. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more story discussions like this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.